Sound check, 1, 2, 3. Sound check, 1, 2, 3.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Open for Business Subcommittee meeting. I'd like to call this meeting to order. It is Monday, April 8th, a particularly auspicious day, so we are hoping to try and be as fast and efficient as possible in order to check out this celestial event that's happening later on this afternoon. Reminder that all electronic devices are to be switched to a non-audible function during committee meetings, and please note that quorum is present. Here with me in Council Chambers is Vice Chair Councillor Cassar. Online is Councillor Maureen Wilson, and I do have Advisor Brenda Wilson from the Stony Creek Chamber, Amanda Stringer online from the Real Estate Association of Hamilton Burlington, and I thought I did see Advisor Sloat online as well from the Hamilton Burlington Society of Architects. There he is. Thank you for being here. Do we also have Greg Dennett is also online? There he is.
Hi, Councillor.
Oh, perfect. Thank you, Advisor Dennett from the Hamilton Chamber of Commerce. I know that we do have some regrets, so we do have Nadine Ubel from the BIA subcommittee sending her regrets. Terry Johns from the West End Home Builders Association is also sending regrets. And ideally, we might be able to see Advisor Petrocelli from the Flamborough Chamber at some point. Anyway, let's move on. Mr. Clerk, are there any changes to this agenda?
Yes, Madam Chair. The presentations for item 8.1, Stakeholder Cybersecurity Incident Update, and 8.2, Construction Management Plan Guidelines PED 24070 have both been uploaded to the agenda.
Wonderful. May I please have a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda as amended? Councillor Cassar, Councillor Wilson. Any discussion on this agenda? Okay, seeing none. May I have the vote, please? Vote is up. And that carries 3-0. Moving on to declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? I do see that Advisor Stringer will have to leave at 2 o'clock, so we'll try to make that make it all work. We will then, seeing that there are no declarations of interest, we'll continue to move on. Moving on to item 8, staff presentations, 8.1. Anita Fayback, Director of Planning and Chief Planner. Alan Shaw, Director of Building Division, Chief Building Official. Binu Kora, Director of Development Planning, are all here to provide committee with a presentation on this item. So perhaps I'll ask Director Fayback to start us off.
Good afternoon, everyone. Anita Fayback, Acting Director of Planning and Chief Planner. Just waiting for the presentation to be loaded on the screen. We just want to discuss with you today, excuse me, the services that the Planning and Economic Development Department is providing as it relates to development applications and building permits following the cybersecurity incident. If you could advance to the next slide, please. So when we talk about development applications, I'm talking about applications such as official plan amendments, zoning bylaw amendments, and site plan applications. So currently we are advancing existing applications and we are accepting new development applications and also new submissions for existing applications that we already have. And in some cases, when there's an existing application, staff have already reached out to the applicant to see if there's some supporting information that they could provide that perhaps we may not have access to. Staff are continuing to communicate with applicants via email or in person, and we are available for meetings as always. Although the city's online portal and our SharePoint site are currently inaccessible, we are receiving new applications and resubmissions by email or in person at the 5th floor service counter. And we are able to accept payment, so payment can be accepted in the form of credit card, debit card, and check, and that was our normal process and normal options for fee payment. And just as of note, since the cybersecurity incident, we have received 34 development applications. So those are currently in varying stages of processing. Next slide, please. Zoning compliance reviews are being processed, reviewed, and are being issued within 15 days. Since the cybersecurity incident, we've received 28 zoning compliance reviews. So those are again, varying stages of being processed. Applicants can apply for their zoning compliance review either via email or in person at the counter on the 5th floor. And currently, zoning verification or property reports are not being processed. Development review team meetings were canceled in March, but they have resumed and all of the canceled items have been rescheduled. So we are up to date with our DRT items. And our design review panel, again, similarly was canceled, but all the meetings have resumed and submissions can be made to staff by email or in person. Next slide, please. Committee of Adjustment meetings resumed on March 26th and are currently in person, and staff are able to receive in-person and written delegations. And just of note, staff have received 30 minor variance applications and 7 consent applications since the incident. And heritage permits, similar to development permits, we are advancing both existing and accepting new applications. And in cases where needed, staff have reached out to applicants for some supporting or supplemental information. The online submission portal is functional. It is through the webpage, so people are able to make their heritage permit application through that portal. And we are targeting a heritage permit subcommittee on April 16th, 2024 to ensure that any heritage permit applications that we do have will meet legislative timelines. And as of note, we've received 2 heritage permits since the incident has occurred. And I'll turn it over to Alan Shaw.
Through the chair, on the building division, the City Hall 3rd floor has remained open throughout the entire event and is currently serving customers at the counter. The issuance of building permit continues, although in a hard copy format. And building continues to take in new applications and advanced building permit applications, and I'll provide some stats in a later slide. Some permit applications have been caught in electronic review system and cannot be advanced. Staff is reaching out to those individuals and advising them that they can switch to a hard copy format in submissions at no additional costs. Next slide, please. Currently, the general inquiry phone lines remain offline. However, I'm told that this will be changing shortly. We hope to have the phone lines up and operational in a short term. We're not accepting or processing routine property record searches at this time, as we have limited access to our data. We are similar to planning. We are accepting payment, credit card, debit, and check at this time. Next slide, please. Since the cyber incident, we've taken in, I've provided the slide, we've taken in 420 applications, new applications, and processed 126 permits. That's about a 30% turnaround, which is a little low, but if you go to the next slide, this is a timeline in regards to the first 14 working days past the incident. As you can see, we initially had some files in the line that could just take payment and be issued, but through the second week we started to slow down due to a lack of ability to access our data and a lack of hard copy permits coming in. But by the 3rd week we had increased the hard copy existing and post incident to about a 70% of our standard issuance per day. Next slide, please. Building inspection requests can be made via the building at hamilton.ca. Enforcement continues. Inquiries and complaints can be received through the similar email website. Unsafe building complaints and investigations continued and are supported through the city call center. An Ontario Renovates program and downtown renewal program remain active. Issuance of paperwork such as occupancy permits, permit extensions, etc., have been paused, but we are issuing hard copies where we need to on a one-by-one basis. Next page, please. Under the engineer review, plan review section, new building permits are being accepted in a paper format only at this time. Applications can be made in person, by mail, or by courier. Applicants with existing paper-based applications continue to be reviewed in the normal manner. Applicants with existing electronic files are being asked to switch over to paper format and are being dealt again on a one-by-one basis. Questions in regards to existing permits can be directed through the building@hamilton.ca email address. Next page, please. On the plans examination section, which tends to be the smaller mom and dad type jobs, we require the individual to come in person, simply because tends to be the mom and dads or the homeowners and non-professionals who are applying for these permits. And what we found is that by allowing them to submit submit by email or courier, submit by mail or courier, it was bogging the system down because they didn't know how to make a complete application. So we found that by actually having a one-on-one, face-to-face with them, it was actually we're getting more complete applications. So this will continue until such time as we can get things back online. Next page, and I'll switch it over.
Thank you, Alan. Madam Chair, I would like to provide an update on the growth management process. The growth management staff are currently working closely with the planning staff to process the development application in a timely manner. Staff continue to review and approve applications. However, staff has limited access to GIS information, reports, engineering studies, and as-built drawings. As such, we are working with the applicant consultant to obtain some additional information as required. Staff is structuring the condition of approval during the development review process to expedite the review process. The water and sewer permits, water meter permits being processed in a normal manner. The applicant can come to the 6th floor City Hall to pay the fees and obtain the permit. Next slide, please. The inspections and letter of credit reduction process. The inspection services proceeding as normal. The LC reductions are also being processed, but more complex applications may be delayed, and the consultants can contact our concession sections to discuss and process the LC reduction process. Grading plan certifications, the inspections processing as normal. The deposit release process may experience some administrative delays. Site alteration permits, the permits are being processed manually. The inspection and enforcement with the MLE proceeding with the minor administrative delays. Next slide, please. So the draft plan of subdivisions and condominium registrations proceeding as normal. The staff may require some additional informations, and they will be contacting the consultant to process the required informations and registering the plan. Municipal address is being reviewed on a case-by-case basis. Class A's and engineering studies, there is no changes. It's going as planned. And general inquiries, they can actually contact the staff, and we are always available to do that. The next slide, please. So the closing remark, actually, I believe for general inquiries, all the emails are actually listed for various divisions, and anyone actually interested, they can actually send the email to these email addresses so that actually we can take care of the issues. Thank you.
Thank you, all three directors, for your update. Just perfect, thank you. Are there any questions for the presentation today? No, seeing none. Well, thank you again. I do have a question, so I will ask Councillor Cassar to take the chair. Through you, Chair, what is our comms plan to actually share this information, not only with the rest of council, because the rest of council is not here or have the benefit of actually hearing this presentation. So what is our comms plan to actually share this with the rest of council, and then ultimately to distill it down into something that's like a infographic or a social media campaign that we can share with residents? Through you, Chair.
Through the chair to the councillor, some of this information was previously provided to our clients initially when we had the IT incident, and they were asking how would we be processing with development applications, and that we translated that information into the FAQs that are on the City of Hamilton webpage. But you are correct, in a little bit more promoting this information through a social media campaign as they have bandwidth capacity to share this information. We will be sharing this information, as well as reaching out to all of our key stakeholders, those who both sit at the Open for Business Subcommittee, as well as other stakeholders we deal with, to share this information on an ongoing basis. And then the intent will be to translate this into a communications update on the City of Hamilton webpage that can then be made available to members of council and any of the public who wish to have this document. So we will be rolling it out. It is a bit of a changing dynamic. So as the EOC and the IT team actually move forward with responding to the IT incident, they are providing some technological solutions, or there's other matters that are being addressed. So we want to make sure that we are providing that current and up-to-date information, and that's why we thought it was important to come today, because I know even our building staff colleagues have been working with both large and small business owners and adjusting their processes to respond to it. I don't want to speak for Mr. Shaw, but you can imagine some of these building permit submissions, especially for the taller buildings, are quite large, like 20, 30 pounds in weight, which is completely different than an individual, whether it's a restaurant looking to upgrade their, vent hood, or a small homeowner looking to put an addition onto their house, like a deck or a shed that may trigger a building permit. So we're wanting to make sure that we are adjusting our processes and then updating our information to applicants so that they have the most current information going. But I do anticipate it'll be a continuous marketing campaign, for lack of better terminology. So as the processes change, we will update that information, and then people know that their updates have been provided. Thank you.
Follow-up question then through you, Chair, is I appreciate that. I hope that we can start to create a bit of a media kit, because I think the challenge is that when I, as a counselor, receive this bundle of information, it's really hard for me to really pull out what are the necessary key points of information. So ideally, if it's a more curated media kit, that could be helpful, because it's something that perhaps we can create our own graphics for it, but like the key statements should be highlighted. Things like the third floor is open, but but email is open, but the phone lines are not. So I think that some of those like key pieces would be very helpful. So in terms like a curated media kit, as opposed to a generalized statement, would be helpful. My next question then through you, Chair, is do we have a set thought process in terms of a timeline to get us mostly back to normal? Has IT kind of given us a sense of where we might be, or how close we are to being back to normal?
Through Mr. Chairman to the councillor, I do believe that the city manager and the EOC team is working on that communication information to provide council. I don't want to speak for them because they're closer to the issues, and it depends on different areas will reach that sort of reactivation compared to other areas, as well as an opportunity or to look at some of the past processes to see if there's an opportunity for a transformational change, and to take advantage of this, to make that transformational change now, rather than just bringing back an old system that wasn't meeting everyone's needs. But there are other things, like last week, I believe it was around the property tax issue that was given a priority, ensuring that staff are paid, vendors are being paid. Those are areas that have been prioritized. And then there's other areas such relating to HR or some of the other processes that will follow. But it's really based on the needs of the organization. But as I did indicate, my understanding is that through the city manager's office, that information and update is being developed and will come to committee and council once they're ready to bring that information forward. Thank you.
Wonderful. My last question through you, Chair, is about the portal. So I know that at our last Open for Business subcommittee, in the before times of cybersecurity, it's funny because I used to call the before times before COVID, but now it's the before times of before cybersecurity. So that portal, to my understanding, was mostly raring to go, but now with the cybersecurity, we've clawed it back, or we can't access it, but we're making changes on it just through what GM Robichaud just said. Is that what's happening with the portal now?
Who can handle that?
Through the chair, thank you very much for the question. You're referring to the planning portal that we had talked about at the last Open for Business subcommittee meeting. The portal, as you noted, was about 90% complete. It was going through its final testing in the month of March. That's what it was scheduled for, and unfortunately, due to the cyber incident, we could not complete that testing phase. And also, once the testing phase would have been completed, we would have relied on our partners in IT to implement it and tie all the back-end pieces in. and that just didn't take place. So at this time, the planning portal's been paused.
So I suppose just a point of clarity then, that planning portal is paused, it's not been canceled, it's just been paused until such time that we are much more in a normal phase where we can follow through on the beta testing and all of that jazz. Is that correct then?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Those are all my questions.
Back to you.
Okay. I recognize Advisor Dennett, please.
Thank you. And through the chair, I would like, you stole my timeline question, which I appreciate. So I will actually more offer up a support of the idea of a media communications, and then we'll further advance that. I was in a meeting with every BIA and Chamber of Commerce on Friday. And the message from each and every one of those organizations was, please utilize us to share key information to the business community around a multitude of options, whether that is funding. And so I would like to offer that up to this group. If there is a media kit, getting that message out through all of our communications, the Hamilton Chamber of Commerce would be very supportive of, because those updates on the timelines and getting everything back on track, I appreciate it's an almost impossible question to answer. However, sharing that information and then making sure it is widespread as possible, we would glad to support.
Wonderful. Thank you, Advisor Dennett. And just looking over to the bench, I think GM Robichaud has done the head nod, so that's great. Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions on this particular presentation? Member Wilson, please.
Thank you, through the chair. Just sort of following up with Greg's, what was shared with us today, may we share these emails and this data to our, okay, thank you.
Yes.
Perfect.
All right, thank you, Advisor Wilson. All right, seeing no more questions, mover into seconder, Councillor Cassar, Councillor M. Wilson, please. And then may I have your vote? Councillor Wilson's thumbs up. That carries 3-0. Thank you. Moving on to 8.2, Construction Management Plan Guidelines. Director Binu Kora, Director of Development Planning, is here to provide committee with a presentation at this time.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and the committee members. I would like to present the city's construction management plan submission requirement in order to process the development applications. In 2019, city developed the construction management plan guidelines, and it was recently updated. In addition, the city also developed the terms of reference for the construction management plan to guide the applicant with respect to the submission of the required studies and documentations. These guidelines were implemented as the standard for all site plan developments, excluding 10 units and less, and minor site plan developments. The need for the construction management plan is based on the impacts to right-of-way and or neighboring properties. So now the question is, what is the construction management plan? A construction management plan is a technical plan that shows construction and demolition work for the proposed development and how it will be managed. The purpose of the construction management plan and accompanying report is to ensure that construction, demolition, and excavation works do not adversely affect public health and safety, traffic, or the environment. Can you go to the next slide, please? So the main three components of the plan consist of construction details, traffic management plan, public communication plan. So I'm going to get into in detail on these three items. Next slide, please. So if you look at this slide, these are the main details the applicant has to include in the construction management plan submission documentations. I will explain these requirements in the upcoming slides, but the main component is surface encroachment, storage and loading areas, shoring, tiebacks and pile construction, crane locations and impacts, noise and vibrations, And there are several studies actually has to be submitted. And also, importantly, the dust control plan and mud tracking and the street tree installation within the right-of-way. Next slide, please. So I would like to provide you an example. This project is currently under construction, and they went through the full construction management plan process to finalize the shoring and excavation permit process. Typically, for these sites within downtown, the building envelope extends from property line to property line. Most of the high-rises has also underground parking. In order for it to be constructed, deep excavations are required. As such, the surface encroachment may be required. The applicant has to submit the details of the encroachment. That means, is there any encroachment to city right-of-way? Is there any encroachment to the private properties? Where the materials are to be stored and loading areas? Next slide, please. So this slide depicts the cross-section for a deep foundation where caisson piles are constructed and tie-backs are utilized to anchor the caisson walls in place. For city to review these drawings, the applicant has to demonstrate that adjacent utilities, including city infrastructures such as sewers and water mains, are not impacted. The applicant also has to submit the utility plans. That utility plans actually has to go to all the utility companies. And also they have to do a precondition survey for all city infrastructures. If you look at that box actually at the top, just close to where I wrote the roads, so that's where the city infrastructures are. So they also have to complete a precondition survey using closed circuit television, that's called a CCTV, to assess the condition of the existing sanitary sewer, storm sewers, and combined sewers. They also have to assess the street light assessment to make sure that there are no impact to the street lights and the sidewalks. If there is any sidewalk closure, they also have to make sure that they go through a process to confirm what are the impacts. They also have to provide the LCs, the letter of credit, and insurance before they start the construction. Next slide, please. So if you look at actually this slide, the green dots, you can see that is the tiebacks. So the applicant has to de-stress the tiebacks as part of the construction process. Next slide, please. So you can see from this photo, they have deep excavations, tiebacks to the neighboring properties. The applicant has to enter into a private agreement with the property owner and submit a copy of the private agreement to the city prior to finalizing the shoring agreement. I just want to say these photos are actually taken from Google. It's not in Hamilton, this one. So I just want to mention this, the source of the photos. So the applicant, the next slide, please. And you can see from this photo, the site is actually too much cluttered. So the applicant has to identify where they have to store their material and the loading zones. Next slide, please. So before the tiebacks are installed, as I explained, the precondition survey of the municipal infrastructures has to be undertaken and is compared against the post-condition survey at the end of the construction to confirm there are no impacts or cracks to the underground infrastructures, especially for the city infrastructures. If there are any deficiencies, the applicant has to fix the deficiencies before city release the letter of credit. Next slide, please. And also part of the process, the applicant actually is required to submit a vibration analysis approved by a professional engineer in order to assess the impact due to the construction to the adjacent properties. The developer also has to complete a precondition survey for the surrounding buildings prior to start of construction. Can you go to the next slide, please? So the applicant is required to initiate a hydrogeological study as part of the site plan process to understand the groundwater impacts. As per the city standard, the applicant cannot permanently discharge the groundwater to the city system due to insufficient capacity. As such, the applicant has to design the foundation as a leak-proof, including geotextile liners, has to be in place. And also, basically, actually, they're doing a bathtub design to make sure that there are no leaks into the basements. And especially, we are actually seeing the underground parking 3 to 4 levels in downtown. So they have to make sure actually they are the leak-proof actually their basements. Next slide, please. And you can also see here the well point dewatering collection system in place to support the excavations. Next slide, please. This slide actually indicates the crane location and the aerial encroachments need to be identified. So the applicant is required to make sure that there are no impacts to the neighboring properties due to the crane swing and so on. Can you please actually go to the next slide? The applicant is also required to ensure when they operating the cranes, they secure flying object to prevent any impacts on the workers, city right-of-way, and the neighboring properties. Next slide. So this slide, actually, you can see the dust control plan is one of the major important component because the access road, actually, they have to give to the pit to get all the materials. And also they have to install the mud mats, and if they are exporting the dust into the road, they have to make sure they do a street sweeping at all times. Next slide, please. And as part of the site plan process, we are working very closely with our landscaping architects in planning division to install the street trees. And one of the important component, if you go to the next slide, this picture illustrates the soil cells being installed within the boulevard to provide adequate soil volume to make sure that the trees actually can grow. And also, as part of the installation, we are also installing the utility conduits or the ducts so that the utility company can utilize or access their infrastructures in a later date, rather than cutting the sidewalk again. Go to the next slide, please. So this is actually just the photo actually after it finished the silver soil cells and the construction. The trees are actually can grow very well. So the next slide, I want to talk about the traffic management plan. The traffic management plan is an integral part of the entire process. So the applicant actually has to demonstrate how to access the site, how the detour plans, the parking management plan for staff, especially the workers doesn't want to take entire parking within the road, that's going to have an impact to the BIA and the business communities. So therefore, they have to provide a parking management plan where the workers are actually parking their cars and so on. That actually going to be reviewed as part of the traffic management plan. And also the signage and the safety measures, the lane closures, sidewalks, and the duration of construction has to be articulated through the traffic management plan. If you go to the next slide, just the illustration of this site actually has inbound and outbound access actually for the site, and the truck, how they have to access the site, and also the pedestrian connectivity as mentioned in these drawings. If you go to the next slide, city also has the traffic management plan has to identify whether any traffic detour is required. The truck whole route must follow the City of Hamilton designated truck routes. So the next slide. So as we all know, the hoarding is one of the integral part of the process. We have to make sure that the hoarding is very important to protect the safety of the public and construction workers. If we go to the next slide. So according to the city's construction management plan guidelines update, the applicant must construct a hoarding and overhead sidewalk protection, including illumination. The design needs to be stamped by a professional engineer. Additionally, the site inspector must prepare a monthly inspection report to confirm the construction management plan requirements are met and that conditions of the hoarding, sidewalk protection and lighting is functioning at all times in accordance with the approved design. So the next two slides, I just wanted to show the design standards actually we came up. Please go to the next slide. And these are the lighting design standards. And the next slide actually just a picture of some of the sidewalk protection. The next slide, please. So the public communication plan is one of the integral process in the construction management plan. We wanted to make sure the ward council is informed about the works, and also it is important that the applicant actually has to notify business community and the surrounding residents, the emergency response units, and also we recommending the builder should actually have a website with the construction updates and the construction informations so that the public can easily access those informations. And also it is important that they have to inform the transit, and also the working hours are very important because we have a bylaw. They have to follow the bylaw requirement for the working hours. And also, as part of the construction management plan, they have to submit a construction schedule to confirm the duration of the construction. And as part of this process, the pre-construction meeting is one of the integral part of the process. So I'll be discussing that in a minute on the next slides. So if you go to the next slide, I just wanted to talk about the approval process. The approval process is the developer is the one actually preparing the construction management plan. Once actually they prepare the construction management plan, they submitting to the planning division. Planning actually circulate to the development engineering. The development engineering staff is responsible to coordinate the comments actually from various divisions, the engineering services, especially the corridor management. Corridor management is dealing with the operations, and sometimes they're dealing with the transportation planning to gather all the informations. And also, if this project is actually within the LRT corridor, we will be informing the LRT office, and also the Metrolinx actually going to be involved. They have their own process. They will be initiating the permit process through Metrolinx. But we actually gather all the comments, and then we finalize the construction management plan. Then we enter into the shoring agreement. If there is any encroachment, we also have to enter into an encroachment agreement and register the agreement. And we need to make sure the letter of credit and insurance is actually provided by the applicant. Once actually we received all these documentations, we finalize we clear the site plan conditions, and we inform the building division they can issue the shoring permit. And there is one difference actually here. The shoring permit doesn't need the site plan approval. If developer actually would like to proceed with the excavation, they can apply for the shoring permit. We actually trying to fast track the construction process here. And however, once the shoring permit is issued, they cannot start the work until they receive the occupancy permit from Public Works. If you go to the next slide, actually just wanted to mention about the traffic management plan review process. So the traffic management plan is actually completely reviewed and approved by the engineering services, the corridor management section, and growth management working actually with the engineering services to process the traffic management plan. And once the comments are addressed, once it's finalized, the applicant actually has to get the road occupancy permit prior to start of any construction. The next slide always actually talks about three components. One is the pre-construction meetings. That's one of the integral part of the construction in the implementation process. So they have to meet with our construction group actually in growth management. Carlo Amantolia is actually here. So his group is basically looking after the pre-construction meeting. And they going to reiterate the approval process, the letter of credit, and whatever actually we received, and the requirements will be discussed at the pre-construction meeting. And the next stage is the implementation. The implementation is to make sure that the applicant is installing the erosion and sedimentation control plan, the MedMat, and also the traffic management plan in accordance with the approved drawings. And also the maintenance is very important. The developer actually has to maintain all the requirements in accordance with the approved plan. And as per the new CMP guidelines, we are requesting a monthly status report actually from the inspector to make sure that the work is actually progressing as planned. And also the letter of credit reduction process is actually done by Carlos Group. If we go to the next slide, this is the last and final slide, talks about the communication and the enforcement process. So if anyone actually has any concerns actually with the work, or even the residents or BAA, or even the councillor, ward councillor actually has any concerns, they can contact the concession section in growth management. We provided 2 emails. One is ccgm@hamilton.ca. That is, the councillors send the comments or concerns actually to the construction group. And also the public actually can contact them with the gmconstruction@hamilton.ca. Once we receive the complaints, the construction group actually contact appropriate divisions in the city departments and address the concerns to the satisfaction of the city and discuss with the councillors as required. And then we close the files once actually that is resolved. So this is the complete process for the construction management plan. If you go to the next slide, thank you for attending the Open for Business, and thank you for listening us. If any questions, I'm happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Cora. Up now on our speakers list, Councillor Kassar, please.
Thanks, Chair Wang, and thanks for the presentation. It's certainly an area beyond my background and knowledge. Just a couple of questions. What I didn't see in the presentation was what are major changes, because I understand this is an update to construction guidelines. So I just wanted to know if the director could speak to what are the major significant changes from previous guidelines, and then the involvement of the development community in arriving at the new guidelines. Through you, Chair.
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor. So if you look at the latest construction management plan guidelines, we included 2 components. Now, the number 1 component is the walk-through sidewalks. So previously, that was not our standards. So we need to make sure that we are protecting the pedestrians. And also, we are also including that the walk-through scaffolding has to be eliminated, because most of the time, once you cover the sidewalk, you may not actually have the lighting, appropriate lighting. And especially in the night, it's going to be dark. So we wanted to make sure that they provide appropriate lighting within that corridor. The second component is they have to give us a monthly inspection report. That was not the requirement of the previous standards. Another component is we also developed a terms of reference, because developers, once actually we go through the guidelines actually may not be very clear. So therefore, actually we can come up with the terms of reference, what type of documents actually they have to include, and giving more clarity of the process. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And then just the second part of the question, just if you could describe how and if the development community was involved in their input. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, through you, Madam Chair. So we had a presentation to the DILG, the Development Industry Liaison Group, and also the terms of reference and the documents were circulated to the development industry for comments. And we didn't receive any comments actually from them. And they were actually easily working with us on all the applications. Actually, they are very aware of the standards.
Thank you. Councillor Maureen Wilson, please.
Thank you, Chair. I believe Member Sloat was in advance of me.
Okay. Advisor Sloat, please.
Problem. Thanks for that through the chair. I appreciate the presentation and especially the clarified terms of reference that have been added. One challenge that we've come up against in generating these is the stage in the process that they're required. It's a site plan approval condition. And typically at that point in the process, there isn't a contractor on board. Sometimes there is, but often there's not. Often we're months and months away from construction starting. So it requires us as consultants to dictate some of the, what I would call the methods and the means that a contractor is going to use, especially as it relates to their staff parking, their street closure and scheduling requirements. So it can be a tricky thing to pin down without that contractor who's actually going to be the one carrying out the works involved in the process. So I was just wondering if you could speak to if you have seen that as a challenge where a number of revisions or changes have to happen to these once construction actually starts, or if you found that to not be the case.
Through you, Madam Chair, through you. So there may be actually concerns with regards to the timing of the construction management plan. However, I believe we had discussions with the DILG about this. One of the important component actually we need to note here is city actually has the ability to collect the information as part of the site plan approval process. Once we issue the site plan approval, city is clearing all the conditions. At the time, city actually cannot proceed or cannot ask for additional information at that time. And also, this is, I think Director Alan Shaw is actually here. As part of the building code, the construction management plan is not a requirement. So therefore, we cannot ask for the construction management plan at that time. So therefore, city would like to see as part of the design process, because especially there are a couple of points I wanted to highlight. So when we review the engineering drawings, that is the time we would like to understand. For example, there is a groundwater issues. If city actually is not allowing any discharge to the city system, the architects and the engineers has to redesign their foundations. And this is all depend on the engineering review process. So at the time, as part of the site plan process, we would like to see the construction management plan. And we had a lengthy discussion with the industry about this previously.
So thank you for that response. I guess more to my direct question was whether you have seen revisions or modifications have to occur from what's submitted early on in the project's life during SPA versus the carrying out of that construction management plan once the contractor is on board, or if there's a mechanism for those revisions to happen.
Through you, Madam Chair, normally actually once it's approved, it goes to the construction section. I will ask Carlo Amendolia, the manager of construction, to answer that question, please.
Hi, Carlo Amendolia, manager of construction here. Through the chair. And that's kind of the purpose of the pre-construction meeting. It's an opportunity to sit down with the contractor, tweak the plan if so desired, and we can bring it back through the approval process and get comment from the various departments and see if that'll work. That's our best opportunity to do that. And in fact, there have been some changes in that process.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right. Okay, thank you very much. Any other speakers to this? Advisor Wilson, please.
Yes, thank you, through the chair. Thank you for a wonderful report. I spent the weekend learning about watersheds and all kinds of things that you have in here, so thank you. But could I respectfully ask that in your public communication plan that you ensure that the business community also includes the chambers of commerce? And because sometimes it might just be the BIA, but there was lots of construction things going on in Stoney Creek last year and the chamber had no clue. So respectfully ask you to add that.
Through Madam Chair, it's a good point. Actually, we will add that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers to this? I'll pass the chair to Councillor Cassara then.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. So where is this information housed? Because I think that at this point, we know that there was a former construction management plan. Now this is an updated construction management plan. Given all of our cybersecurity, where are we putting this information for people to access this?
Through Madam Chair, through Mr. Chair, to the councillor. So this actually, all this documentation, all the design standards actually supposed to be in the city website. We will be downloading the terms of reference and also the construction management plan guidelines to the city website.
Okay. Perfect. So then I have two questions then. I understand that from the changes, we will be mandating essentially sidewalks and ensuring that there's scaffolding and there's lighting, so this is perfect. What about signage for detours, accessible doorways, ensuring that businesses are open during construction? Because many times they could be anywhere, but at the same time, any type of construction may hinder access to those businesses. So how is that being factored in?
Through you, Madam Chair, the traffic management plan is the time actually they look at the impact to the surrounding lands, and engineering services are actually reviewing the traffic management plan. They will be looking at which are the impact, even actually the access to these sites, the neighboring properties, actually how they're going to access during the construction if there is any lane closure or road closures and impacts. So that is actually going to be taken into consideration while actually we finalizing the traffic management plan documentations.
Okay, thank you. My last question, I do have just thought of one other question. Sure. When it comes to the actual process, and that was on slide 28, where you actually had a flow chart that talked about all of the different areas of how you were going to get approvals and that sort of thing. Is there a way to make that more efficient? Because one of the pieces of criticism we hear from the city of Hamilton is that we are slow and we take a long time to kind of get us through the process. And I understand the due diligence, I understand we ought to be doing that, but is there a way for us to make that a much more efficient process? Through you, Chair.
Director.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor. So we are actually very efficient at the moment. If there is any deficiencies, we can discuss. But at the moment, this is the flow chart. Actually, we came up to fast track this review process. There are a couple of things, I believe. Once actually we received the construction management plan guidelines, that's why development engineering is actually dealing directly with these departments to make sure that we collect the information in a timely manner. Secondly, if there are any impacts, we are directly meeting with the affected department and we providing comments. And if there is any further suggestions from the floor or the committee, we can actually go back and look at the process.
A point just supplementary to that is because we're going through multiple phases, so we're going through development, engineering, then we go through site plan, then we go through, is there a point person within PED that actually manages this file from end to end? Or do we end up having to pass this file over to the next group and then somehow communications get lost, or the client feels like there might be a mismanagement of the file, and then they feel like they haven't been fully taken care of? So from our back end, do we actually have like project champions through PED that can watch this project go from beginning through to the end? Is that something that we've ever considered in the past? Through you, Chair?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe at the moment, Councillor, I believe when the planner is actually on the file, they are the project managers processing these files. And also, up to the approval process, we are working with the applicant. And once the approval process is actually completed, one person actually from my group is managing the files with the developers, consultant, and also other departments. Once it's done, at the pre-construction meeting, these files are actually transferred to the construction section. And from there on, the project manager is dealing with the applicant, and that is the pre-construction meeting is the one where we are transferring the files, and also the applicable staff actually going to be there taking over that file with the consultant and also with the developer.
Okay. And I'll continue to take this offline with the rest of our teams, but I hear consistently from the business community that they feel like the file's been kind of bounced around, it kind of gets lost along the way, there may be staff turnover, but it's really hard for them to feel like they've been properly or adequately taken care of end to end. So I wonder if there's an opportunity for us to explore what does that look like in terms of better customer service for each file that comes forward. My last question is a bit of an operational one, is how are we building in time for essentially dispute resolution? Because I do hear sometimes from the community that they're saying they don't understand one of our processes. Why is it that it's so expensive? And I brought this to you, Director Cora, before, earlier, which was something very specific, which was the tiebacks and the shoring. And we've had the development community come and speak to me about how expensive, inefficient, it adds additional time, that they feel that it's redundant and doesn't have. So how do we build in dispute resolution into this program and actually have it still be in that very highly efficient end-to-end process? Like, I'd just like to understand, how does dispute resolution come through here?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the councillor. So the dispute resolution actually comes as part of the review process. So basically, when we receive the construction management plan submissions, we go through the details with the developer and also his consultant. For example, the tiebacks, we talked about the tiebacks. The tiebacks, some of the applicant or the developers are actually saying, we cannot distrust the tiebacks, that's adding cost. There are a couple of components to that. Number one, there is a private property, they are doing the tiebacks. So as part of the approval process, they have discussions with the neighboring properties, and they are entering into a private agreement with the private property owners. If the private owner is agreeing that they don't need to distrust, they can put it in the agreement and provide that information to the city so that the city can accept. The main component actually here, we wanted to make sure city is not taking any liability due to not distressing the works, or if there are any damage to their property. Because especially most of the cities, we do a benchmarking with other municipalities. So most of the municipalities distrust the tiebacks within the right-of-way. Some of the municipalities not even allow the tiebacks within the right-of-ways, but in order to take care of that medium dispute resolutions, we wanted to make sure that we're supporting the development. That's why we allow the tiebacks wherever it's possible. And another component is during the constructions. If there is any issue happens, the inspectors and the project managers are available on site. They have a regular site meetings to make sure that all these issues can be resolved. And in addition to that, we are prepared to meet with the affected landowners and developers to discuss different standards.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Take a moment.
Caught me all choked up. Such a beautiful answer. Thank you, Chair. I think that at the core of this, it is about level setting and expectation setting. Because with our construction management plans, with their terms of reference and the guidelines, I think that they're very fulsome. I just want to make sure that they're actually being put somewhere that people can access them. And that way, prior to coming forward and just ensuring that we are level setting their expectation by putting this front and forward, these are the points that we need to see. Mm-hmm. And we don't want to waste time, we don't want to waste anybody's money on any of that. So I just want to ensure that my last sort of question and point is that we're very deliberate as to how we actually roll out the communications around this and ensure that the community moving forward understands where to find this information. That's just my last point, Chair.
Are you looking for an answer? heard it's going to be on the website.
Through you, Mr. Chair, when we actually have, we also have a formal consultation meetings actually with the applicant in the initial stage. At the time, the staff is actually providing all these documentations to the applicant. So, and also we are ahead of providing the information to the applicant to understand what are the standards, what are the reports actually need to be submitted. So that is actually transferred through the planning staff to the applicant. And also we will make sure these documents are posted actually in the city website for additional information. And also we are there anytime any consultants actually would like to talk to us. The staff is always available to support them.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Back to you.
All right, thank you very much. Now, if there are no more questions on the presentation, may I have a mover and a seconder to receive the presentation? Councillor Kassar, Councillor Maureen Wilson. May I have the vote, please? Vote is up. Thumbs up from Councillor Wilson. And that vote carries 3-0. Thank you. Moving on to the report now. May I have a mover and a seconder to put the report on the floor? Councillor Kassar and Councillor Maureen Wilson. Are there any questions on the report? Seeing none, may I have a vote, please? Vote is up. Councillor Maureen Wilson's a thumbs up. And that carries 3-0. Thank you. Moving on to item 9, consent items. 9.1 is the Light Rail Transit Corridor Business Update, PED 24074. May I have a mover and a seconder to put 9.1 on the floor, please? Councillor Maureen Wilson, Councillor Kassar. Would committee like to hear a brief overview, or can we move on to discussing the report? Looks like we're discussing the report. Okay, are there any questions on this report? Okay, Councillor Kassar, could you take the chair, please?
Go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, just wanted to get a question. Last time we were here at Open for Business, one of the very pointed questions I asked was there any discussion or consultation or research on potential financial incentives to support businesses that will be impacted by LRT construction? This report is very fulsome, but it feels like the same similar Metrolinx report that we've seen in the past, which sounds like it's a very generalized, we're going to set up a committee, we will talk about these things, but they didn't talk about very specific to Hamilton things. So I was wondering if I could ask Director Abdul Sheikh to just to give a touch more information on that particular point. Thank you.
Dr. Sheikh.
Through the chair, this is Abdul Sheikh, Director, LRT Project Office, and thank you for the question. Again, yeah, so as you know, this program is being led by Metrolinx, and this report, they did mention about the 4 pillars they will be working on. In terms of support, what we understand, there will be, some support in terms of the wayfinding signages and those kind of things, but I don't think there will be a financial support in terms of the business laws, similar to other projects, right? But there will be some support in terms of working with the local businesses to provide the wayfinding signages and the shop local and those kind of incentive. They will be working through that pillar they have identified.
Okay. Second question then through you, Chair, is I did see that Toronto is doing something very similar with FedDev Ontario. So it struck me that it wasn't a Metrolinx thing, even though Metrolinx was somehow related, but it was a Toronto-led, City of Toronto-led funding opportunity or grant opportunity that was funded through FedDev to actually support any of the small businesses impacted by major transit construction. Again, I do understand what you just said, Director. I just want to understand, are we, because Toronto has led this on that side, could we do something similar on our side? Is that something that we can potentially look at? Through you, Chair.
Director.
Through the chair, definitely, like I would say this is still premature because they haven't gone to the procurement process and we don't know what kind of issues we're going to and how it compares to City of Toronto. We will definitely be working with, as mentioned in the report, the local businesses, BIAs, and then Chamber of Commerce and other things, so we can explore these opportunities as project evolves, and we will definitely be looking at the other benchmarking projects like City of Toronto.
My last question then, because as we all heard from Director, is that this is still an ongoing process, so perhaps, does it make sense to take it off the OBL? Should we potentially keep it on the outstanding business list? Because this is not resolved yet. We are still lots of different information that's still up in the air. So just perhaps asking, I don't know, perhaps to Mr. Clerk or to the Director, is this something that we should be eliminating off of the outstanding business list, or should we be continuing to keep this on as we keep this top of mind and at the forefront? Not sure who to ask.
Director?
Through the chair, I would suggest, like we could refer to the LRT subcommittee because that's a committee will be looking at all the construction issues and construction management issues as well. So we can probably look through the LRT subcommittee later down the road.
So suggestion then to refer the item to the subcommittee, is that what I heard, or to staff to bring it up there?
Again, through the chair, it will be up to the council member. If there is a particular item under this direction, which council you mentioned about the business support, the financial support and other things. So I will leave with the member of council if you want to put a new direction, which we can bring back when we have more information available from Metrolinx.
Okay. So I think, Chair, I would like to keep this at least front and foremost and just very top of mind, because I'm supremely worried about the small businesses that will be impacted by LRT construction in particular. But perhaps at LRT subcommittee, we can explore what that looks like for LRT, but at some point, this would be great if we could roll this across the city. Anytime we have any type of major road construction, that maybe we can start to explore what that financial incentive potentially looks like to keep businesses going. And that might have to come back to open for business after a while, but I'm leaving it to committee and perhaps some of our advisors to kind of weigh in on something like that. But I'm not really sure I just want to keep this top of mind is what I'm looking at.
The clerk?
Through the chair, so the report back has been fulfilled, so if it should be removed from the OBL, but if you have further direction for staff, then you can move that at this time.
Okay.
Or at a future meeting.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
So I may leave that for a future meeting then, because I'd like to really chat with the director and perhaps with Director Lawley to actually get a better sense of where that is, just so that committee knows that I would like to really keep this top of mind for us, because I'm super worried about the small businesses. So
That sounds like a good path forward.
thank you. I'm
Chair,
done.
back to you.
Thank you. I recognize Advisor Dennett, please.
Through the chair, and I probably more of a comment. I just couldn't agree more with you that this needs to remain in this area, the impact the LRT is going to have on our business community going forward, whether that's in the next 6 months or dare I say 6 years, keeping this on top of the radar in whatever way we need to, I think is imperative. Again, I will defer to the experts on the procedural requirements, but I'll just add that, we have a meeting later this month with Metrolinx to continue those conversations that are noted in the report. And again, even those updates I think are important to this, but the imperativeness of this program and supporting our small businesses. And if there are opportunities to identify additional funding opportunities, such as the one you mentioned, Councillor, again, we'd be very supportive of providing our assistance in any way possible, or potentially leading if required, because I don't think we can lose sight of the impact that the construction is going to have on our downtown and along the corridor, and along with the additional programs going on in our downtown right now. I think it's just we need to keep this top of mind for our small business owners throughout our community.
Thank you. I'm glad that you agree. All right, thank you. Are there any other comments or questions on this particular report? Okay, seeing none, we have a mover and a seconder. May I have the vote, please? Vote is up. And that vote carries 3-0. Thank you very much. On to item 12, which is notices of motion. Are there any notices of motion? Okay, seeing none. Moving on to the general information and other business. I'll start with 13.1, which is the amendments to the outstanding business list. May I please have a mover and a seconder to approve the amendments of the outstanding business list? Councillor Cassar, Councillor Maureen Wilson. Are there any discussions at all? I think we just kind of had our discussion. If seeing none, let's move on to the vote, please. Vote is up. That vote carries 3-0. Any other business from, say, the bench, GM Robichaud or Director Lawley? Nope, shaking heads. Okay, all good. Thank you so much. Now we will move on to adjournment. All right, thank you, Councillor Cassar and Councillor Maureen Wilson. May I have the vote to adjourn, please? Vote is up. And that vote carries 3-0. Thank you, committee. Thank you, advisors. Thank you to the bench for being here. See you next meeting, which will be July 15th at 9:30 a.m. Thank you all again. Have a great